I count on the loving help of my darling wife. We owe her the most heartfelt debt any family could owe for her love, affection, guidance, understanding, and example.
In the quiet of a royal chamber, where history lingers in every gilded frame and polished surface, King Charles stumbled upon something that pierced far deeper than any crown or throne ever could. Hidden away in Princess Diana's old jewelry box, among pearls and diamonds, was a folded note. What he read brought the king to tears. But what exactly did Diana leave behind as her final gift? Join us as we uncover the shocking revelation that made King Charles cry. The secret gift. It was the calm and familiar rhythm of duty that shaped the early days of King Charles III's reign, beginning on the morning of 8th September 2022. As one public record described in detail, the king was seated inside his private study at Buckingham Palace. Before him were stacks of state documents that needed his attention, and he was also making the final arrangements for his long-awaited coronation. The weight of the crown was not only on his head, but also on his heart. Every day since the passing of his mother, Queen Elizabeth II, the Daily Mail had been his quiet companion, giving him small moments of relief in between the endless pressures of monarchy.
King Charles. During the American president's visit, the monarch failed to get him moving and directed his ire at the guard.
But that morning did not unfold as just another routine. Sir Clive Alderton, the king's private secretary, entered the study with the day's post. Among the usual piles of parliamentary paperwork, formal diplomatic dispatches, and official letters, there was one small parcel. At first glance, it looked ordinary, almost unremarkable, until Charles noticed the handwriting on it. The flowing calligraphy was elegant, graceful, and instantly recognizable. His face, according to the account, turned pale in an instant. The package was wrapped in old, faded blue paper, worn down by the passage of time. The handwriting, it was said, belonged to none other than Diana, Princess of Wales. The tension in the room grew thick. Sir Clive, noticing the sudden change in the king's expression, suggested that the parcel should be taken away and examined by security. That was the standard procedure for any item not directly requested by the king. But Charles refused. "No, please leave me," he reportedly said, his voice tightening under the weight of emotion. "Do not disturb me." When he was finally alone, in that historic study that had silently witnessed his most private struggles and public burdens, Charles slowly unwrapped the parcel. Inside was not one of the grand jewel-studded caskets belonging to the crown, but something far more personal, a plain mahogany box. It was once Diana's, kept in her private chambers at Kensington Palace. At the top of the box was a golden imprint of the Spencer family crest, gleaming faintly against the worn wood. Attached to the box was an envelope with his name on it. Inside lay a letter, dated August 29, 1997, only 2 days before Diana's tragic passing. The words at the very beginning shattered the wall of restraint he had carefully built around his emotions. "My dearest Charles," the letter continued, as though Diana had written directly across time, "if you are reading this, it means I have already passed away, and you have reached the moment when you finally understand what I have always known, that despite the pain, despite the quarrels, despite the public storms, our love never truly ended. Inside this box lies the truth I could never tell you while I was alive. Open it only when you're ready to remember who we were before the world forced us into roles we could not escape." With trembling hands, Charles lifted the lid. The first thing to reach him was a fragrance, her fragrance, a soft, lingering mix of jasmine and wildflowers, Diana's signature perfume. The scent carried him instantly back to the bright, hopeful years of their youth, when love still seemed simple and endless. But the box held more than just jewels and memories. Beneath the silk lining was a hidden compartment. Inside, according to dramatic accounts, was another message, and an object that would shake the foundations of everything Charles thought he knew about their marriage, about Diana's death, and about the choice that had haunted him ever since. But what secret was Diana hiding all this time? Letters from a Broken Heart. King Charles was seen in tears after uncovering a deeply personal note hidden inside Princess Diana's jewelry box. What at first seemed like an ordinary discovery has now shaken the very foundations of the monarchy. Reports claim that a manuscript has been leaked, one that contains secrets never meant for public eyes. Inside its pages are whispers of a hidden royal history, an attempt at reconciliation, a tragedy that was carefully buried, and even a vision of a monarchy that could have been very different. According to the stories surrounding this manuscript, it contains what are said to be the final confessions of Diana, Princess of Wales. For years, historians and the public believed they knew everything about her last months. Yet this document, already circulating in exclusive historical and journalistic circles, suggests otherwise. If its contents are true, it has the power to rewrite how the world sees not only Diana, but also King Charles and the monarchy itself. The account claims that in the weeks before her death, Diana was preparing for something few could have imagined: a reconciliation with Prince Charles, who is now King Charles III. Their marriage, long believed to be irreparably broken, was, according to her writings, close to a secret reunion. But this is not the only revelation. The manuscript also claims Diana was the victim of blackmail over a devastating hidden tragedy: the loss of a secret third child, a daughter, whose existence the public never knew about, and whom Charles himself allegedly never learned of. The most shocking twist is that these confessions were not lost to time. In the spring of 2024, a jewelry box that had been long forgotten was handed over to Buckingham Palace. Inside were letters, diary entries, and even an audio tape from Diana herself. All of these were meant solely for King Charles III. Together they tell a story not of an ending, but of a love that might have found its way back, if only fate had not intervened in Paris on August 31, 1997, when Diana tragically lost her life. Among the most explosive claims in the manuscript are that Diana and Charles lost a daughter whose existence was hidden from the world, that her romance with Dodi Fayed was a carefully constructed facade, and that her final trip to Paris was not a choice of her own, but rather the result of a sinister blackmail plot. If proven true, these revelations would force the public to rethink everything they thought they knew, not only about Diana and Charles, but about the entire modern era of the British monarchy. For now, Buckingham Palace has responded only briefly, dismissing the story as speculative and unsubstantiated claims regarding private matters. Yet the statement has done little to stop the wildfire of curiosity and debate spreading around the world. Did Charles ever write to Diana? Let's find out. King Charles' unsent letter. At the very bottom of the jewelry box, buried beneath layers of folded notes and keepsakes, the book claims there was a small micro-cassette tape. On its label were the haunting words, "For Charles, play alone." This tiny tape carried with it a voice that could cut straight to the heart. Diana's own voice, raw, trembling, and unguarded. She was not addressing the public, not speaking for the cameras, but speaking directly and privately to Charles. The tape began with words that must have shattered him. "Hello, my darling Charles." It was an intimate greeting, a secret expression of affection, and according to the account, the moment Charles heard it, he lost his composure. Her voice, fragile but steady, continued, "You need to hear these words, but I do not have the courage to say them to your face, so I am recording them for you instead. Charles, I have been such a coward, such a foolish and stubborn woman. My pain grew into anger, and that anger became a weapon I used against you. I let my fury consume me. I am sorry, deeply sorry. You have my sympathy." The recording is said to have contained Diana's most vulnerable confession. She admitted her part in the collapse of their marriage, her own affairs, her secret dealings with the press, and the ways she had deliberately turned the public against him. Her voice shook as she went on. "Every time I lashed out at you, Charles, it was because I was still fighting for us. My way of fighting was wrong, but it came from love. I could never bring myself to leave you completely. I never knew how. Then came something even more extraordinary. Alongside the tape was another envelope, this one marked Charles's answer. Inside was a letter in Charles's own handwriting. The manuscript claims it was a draft he had written soon after the divorce, but one he had never sent. Somehow, Diana had found it and kept it with her. His words, forgotten by him but preserved by her, now returned to him like an echo. My dearest Diana, after all the ways I have failed you, I know I have no right to ask for forgiveness. What you never knew was that I was terrified of loving you as much as I wanted to. I have never confessed this truth to you. With Camilla, I felt safe because she asked for so little and I could manage to meet her expectations. But with you, my God, Diana, you were alive, brilliant, and passionate. You deserved everything, and I feared that if I opened my heart fully, you would see how small and inadequate I really was. I was trapped in the cage of royal duty from the day I was born, and I never grew beyond it. I failed to give you the husband you deserved. At the bottom of the page, barely legible, there was a scratched-out postscript. If you ever wanted to try again, I would spend the rest of my life proving that I could be the man you deserved the first time. The implications of these discoveries are staggering. If even part of this account is true, then the monarchy faces deep questions about its very foundation. For King Charles III, this document does not portray him simply as the cold and unfaithful husband history remembers, but as a tragic figure, a man torn apart by fear, by duty, and by the love he could not express.
At times, the couple seemed happy and would even indulge in a little PDA.
It paints him not as indifferent to Diana's suffering, but as someone who was on the verge of reconciliation, a reunion he longed for as much as she did. If revealed, such writings could soften his image in the public eye, showing him as flawed yet deeply human, a grieving father, a regretful husband, and a man imprisoned by the rigid rules of the crown. But they would also raise uncomfortable questions. Why had the monarchy's traditions kept two people, once so deeply bound, from speaking to each other honestly? And for Diana, the text presents a more complex and layered woman than the one so often remembered as a saintly victim. It shows her not only as emotionally unstable at times, but also as calculating and determined, someone who used her public image as a weapon while secretly plotting reconciliation. It even suggests she was willing to forgive Camilla and consider rebuilding her marriage with Charles, not from weakness, but from a new maturity. The story reveals Diana not as a simple symbol of innocence, but as a woman of depth, contradictions, and extraordinary courage, capable of both fury and forgiveness, destruction and healing. Do Charles and Diana have another child other than William and Harry? Let's take a closer look. The Secret Daughter. The second message was the most shocking of all. It was written in a hurry, only a few hours before Diana left for Paris. The ink in some places looked smudged, as though her tears had fallen on the page while she wrote. In that message, Diana addressed Charles directly. She wrote, "I am leaving for Paris tonight, but before I go, I must tell you the truth. I had an affair with James, yes, but the baby I lost in December of 1985 was not his. That child was yours. We have 3 children, Charles. We have a daughter." The book describes the moment Charles read these words. His hands trembled, and he had to grip his desk for support, struggling to take in what he had just learned. A daughter, a child he never knew about, a life he never had the chance to mourn, because no one ever told him the truth. The letter then explained why Diana had remained silent for so long. She confessed, "At that time I couldn't tell you. After Harry was born, you became so distant, so cold with all of us. You had already decided our marriage was a mistake. I could not bear to trap you with another child, another life you might come to resent. But Charles, I loved her. I loved her with all my heart. For every moment of the 3 months I carried her." If this confession is true, it shines a new light on one of the darkest periods in their marriage. Royal historians have often noted how, in the closing months of 1985, Diana suddenly withdrew from public life. Many believed it was because of the pressures of her royal duties and the cracks forming in her marriage. What few understood was that she was quietly grieving a devastating personal loss, all on her own. At that very time, Charles was leaning more and more on his relationship with Camilla Parker Bowles. He thought Diana was unstable, perhaps emotional and unpredictable, but according to this message, she was not unstable at all. She was a grieving mother who had been left completely alone in her sorrow. Diana even revealed the name she had given their lost daughter, Elizabeth Rose, after Charles's mother, the Queen, and after Diana's own middle name. Her words were painfully vivid. "I buried her myself at Althorpe. It was only me and the priest, no one else. She rests now in the Spencer family cemetery beneath a small stone that reads only, 'Beloved Daughter.' I visit her every year on her birthday, December 23rd. Charles, I loved her, and I will never stop loving her." The image is haunting. Diana, alone at Althorpe on Christmas Eve, grieving in silence for the child she had lost, while the rest of the royal family gathered in Sandringham to celebrate the holidays. The book says that Charles was overcome with sobs as he remembered the past. Moments that once seemed small and strange, Diana's sudden sadness during the holidays, her solitary trips to her family's estate, her red and swollen eyes, suddenly made sense. He realized he had ignored the signs of her silent suffering, believing them to be symptoms of their troubled marriage, when in fact, they were the hidden scars of a private tragedy. The final piece of evidence hidden in the box made the truth even more undeniable. At the very bottom, tucked away in a tiny velvet bag, was a locket of white gold that Charles had never seen before. When he opened it, he found two images. On one side was a familiar photograph of himself and Diana, taken during their engagement, their faces still glowing with the hope of a happy future. But on the other side, he discovered something far more heartbreaking. A faded, blurry ultrasound image of an unborn child. It was not just an object, it was the ghost of a life that never came to be, a daughter he never met, a part of his history and Diana's grief that he was never allowed to share. Was any of the party ready to make amends? Let's find out. Diary of a Reunion. The jewelry box was said to have held something extraordinary. A thick envelope marked with the haunting words, "Read this last." Inside that envelope was a collection of diary entries, written during the final weeks of Princess Diana's life. These entries were not random scribbles, but a carefully unfolding story of her true thoughts, her raw emotions, and her hidden hopes. Even more astonishing, the jewelry box was said to also contain the long-buried secret about their missing daughter, a mystery that had remained locked away for years. For so long, the world had been told that Diana was happy, moving forward with Dodi Fayed, ready to begin a new chapter. Yet the words inside this envelope seemed to completely shatter that belief. They told a very different story, one that revealed not a woman moving on, but a woman still deeply tied to her past. One entry, dated July 15, 1997, was especially powerful. It read, "I've been thinking about us again, Charles. Not the versions of ourselves that the cameras captured, not the polished characters we performed for the press or the palace, but the real us. Do you remember when we first met at Balmoral, before the engagement?"
Speaking about their engagement, the young bride-to-be wore a modest, off-the-peg blue suit.
That first night, when we walked by the loch under the stars. You confessed to me then that you were afraid of becoming king, that the role might consume you, that you would lose yourself in duty and expectation. I promised you that I would be the one to keep you grounded, to remind you of who you truly are. The manuscript describes how this single memory struck King Charles with overwhelming force. It brought back to him one of the rarest moments of Diana's genuine vulnerability and tenderness, a time when they were simply two people, not royal figures. From there, Diana's writing took a darker, more reflective turn. It moved away from the image of herself as a victim, which the public often saw, and instead became painfully self-critical. I failed you, didn't I? I was so lost in my own pain, so desperate to be loved, that I forgot the promise I made. I should have fought harder for us, Charles. But instead I gave in to anger and pride. I let the world into our private struggles, when I should have protected what we built together. The truth is, I have never stopped loving you. Even when I was with other men, even when I spoke about Camilla, even when I lashed out at you, I still loved you. You were always the man I chose, the man I married, and the father of my children. Thank you for being there, even when I pushed you away. Had this confession alone been made public, It would have been enough to rewrite everything the world thought it knew about Diana, but her diary went even further, revealing a shocking secret about letters that Charles had written after their separation but never sent. Diana wrote, "I know about the letters, Charles, the ones you wrote after we parted, the ones you never meant for me to see. Edward, your loyal courier, not Prince Edward, found them in your desk and told me. Every apology, every declaration of love, every regret. I read them all. Why didn't you send them? Why did we both let pride matter more than the truth?" These unsent letters painted a heartbreaking picture. Two people trapped on opposite sides of the same silence, both longing to reconcile, yet both too afraid to reach out. Then came the most crucial entry of all, dated August 10th, 1997. "I've made my decision. I'm ending things with Dodie. I know you may not understand, but the truth is it was never real. It was a performance, a way to make you jealous, to prove to myself that I could move on. But I cannot. Charles, Dodie is kind, but he is not you. He could never be you. You are the man I loved, the man I still love, and the man I want back in my life." According to the manuscript, Diana had even written out a plan. She would break off her relationship with Dodie while in Paris, return quietly to London, and arrange a private meeting with Charles. She had even gone so far as to send a letter to the Queen, asking for her blessing to explore the possibility of a reconciliation. One entry included what appeared to be a letter addressed to Camilla herself, written with startling maturity. "I know you will always be part of Charles's life, Camilla. I accept that, but I also know that what he and I had was real, something deep and worth fighting for. Perhaps there is a way to honor both the past and the future. Maybe we can build something new from the ashes of what was destroyed." This revealed that Diana's trip to Paris was not the grand romance that history has painted it to be. It was not the height of a love affair. It was the ending of one. It was meant to be her final public act with Dodie, before quietly stepping away, closing one chapter and daring to reopen another. So, what do you think about the secret letter in Princess Diana's jewelry box that made King Charles cry? Share your thoughts with us in the comments section. Don't forget to like and subscribe.